Okay, we're here on RealAgriculture.com at CropWeek in Saskatoon. We're here with Kevin Hursh. Welcome today, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Okay, Kevin, it's been a long week, but CropWeek is completed.
Yep.
And so I thought we'd maybe sit down and talk about some of the highlights, maybe some of the lowlights, and just kind of do a bit of a wrap-up on some of the things that we saw.
Some of the things that stand out in my mind, of course, the flax situation with the GM, and they asked for a little bit of time at everybody else's meeting too, so they caught all the producers just to explain the very unique situation they're in. And it's just amazing that 0.01% of something that doesn't matter at all in the European market has screwed up that market so badly. And you know, if you think about it too hard, you can get kind of mad about it.
Yeah, there's no worse numbers than 0 and 100.
Yeah. But it's interesting too. I'm involved in the Mustard Commission, in addition being help with coordination of Crop Production Week, and you know, in that case, it's canola admixture at very low levels in mustard, which has happened forever. But it's really affected the brown mustard market in Europe because Greenpeace has got on their high horse, Austria has got concerned about it, and now there's a lot of those companies looking to get their mustard supply, especially their brown mustard supply, out of Eastern European nations, just because they're concerned about this GM thing, because consumers are concerned. So, yeah. Boy, I guess the consumer's always right. Even if the consumer's stupid, the consumer's always right, and it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, for sure. There, of course, all the different commodity groups had meetings through the week. We heard a lot of price outlooks. Were there some highlights and lowlights for you there?
Yeah, and I guess I always interesting to watch the various projections. Larry Weber is saying 850 to 950 is the likely new crop canola price. When he gave his presentation a little earlier in the week, $9 a bushel was barely available at a few locations for fall delivery. You know, Greg Costel pegged it as a $9 a bushel new crop price, for instance. Where will peas be? Yellow peas. Well, the guys were in around $6. Greg Costel of Costel Ag Consulting thought they might take a run at $7 a bushel at some point. Lentils, very important for Saskatchewan, and they're almost all in Saskatchewan. You guys in Alberta should have learned to grow them a few years earlier. I'm firmly convinced that lentils would work in a big chunk of Alberta, but bless you for not growing them. But you know, there's no doubt that lentil acreage is going to be huge. You know, with that price sitting at 38 cents, they're hugely profitable against all expectations. How profitable will they be if our acreage goes from 2.3 to 3.2 million acres? You know, well, the guys are saying it could be below 20 cents, it might be 22 cents, it might be in that range somewhere. The thing is, even at 22 cents, it shows good profit for the guys that can produce a crop.
But farmers start to still think about the 35.
We tend to think about what we lost. We think about the buck a bushel we probably lost on canola prices due to salmonella and due to the problems with the Chinese marketplace. We think about 38 down to potentially 22 or 20 cents on lentils and say, oh God. But we should remember back about 3-4 years ago at Crop Production Week, people were ready to jump off bridges because there was nothing you could look at that would potentially produce a profit unless you could grow some sort of obscene yield. Mm-hmm. And now, you know, certainly it isn't like 2008 anymore. You know, not everything looks glowing. It's not going to be that easy. But in the south, people got lentils. The rest of the area, people got canola to produce profit. You know, the outlook isn't as bad as some people, you know. We should remember how dismal things looked in the not too distant past, and things aren't like 2008, but they could be a lot worse.
Yeah, also we had the wheat board meeting today, the dreaded discussion around durum and some of those price looks.
Yeah, and durum is a dog, you know, and unless even with a big cutback in acreage, and even with reduced yield with some weather problems, we got a big slug of durum to work through, and I think that's weighing on a lot of the market, you know, weighing on people's minds. You know, the wheat board only took 40% of the A series contract. Maybe by the end of the year they'll be up to 70%, but there's still going to be a pile of durum carried over. So there's going to be a big switch out of durum acres, and the question is, where do you go with that? What cereal do you grow in your rotation that looks very good? That's the one that is difficult. There is no cereal that's an obvious winner.
It's a bit of a toss-up. what about I was over at the trade show. There seemed to be quite a few people there. Seemed like good attendance here. What do you think was kind of what's the mental state of the farmer that was in attendance this week?
Oh, people they like the trade show and they like kicking iron, and then there's a lot of people that like to come to the meetings, but there's others that don't give me this meeting stuff. I'll get it by listening to Sean's. I can pick it up elsewhere. It's somewhere in between. It's somewhere between the euphoria of 2008 and the absolute depression of a couple of years earlier than that. So, people are cautious. They're a little bit restless, and just where do they go with their marketing and their seeding plans. But the cash situation on most farms, not everybody was lucky to get a good crop, and not everybody is growing the right crops, but the cash situation on average is a heck of a lot better on farms than it's been in a long time. So that's very positive.
Yeah. So Wednesday night we had the big keynote from John Phipps. What was his message?
He's an interesting guy. One of these speakers that can engage a crowd without the use of PowerPoint. You just like to hear him spin stories. And if you ever get a chance to see John Phipps in person, I'd recommend you go. The trouble is, it's the year before we had a guy speaking, an expert out of the U.S., David Asbridge, on fertilizer prices, and it's easy to promote it, and there's 500 people there. How do you explain what John Phipps does? Because he talks a little bit about American policy, he talks a little bit about philosophy, he talks about his own farm, and it's all very engaging, but it's difficult to promote until, if you haven't seen him or don't know name recognition much up here on this side of the border. We had maybe 200, 225 people there, but everybody that went loved it, and you can tell when a presentation is good because he had a crowd of people around him for the next hour after the presentation wanting to visit. So that's the sign of a success, but I wish we would have had more bums in seats. But there's so many meetings going on through the week and so many places to be. It's tough.
Yeah. So finally, was there a highlight or something that you really took out of the week that you think a lot of producers would sort of leave home or go home with?
No, I think just the packet of pricing information and all of those numbers and supply and demand swirling around in your head. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's a lot of what producers come for, is they try to take something home that they can implement within their business plan. Yeah. So isn't any one thing, if it is one thing, it's maybe how fragile a market can be to be screwed up in a hurry, and that, I'm a believer. I like to have some certainty price-wise, some contract signed for something going into the spring seeding season. And not everybody agrees, because sometimes that isn't your best return, but in times like this, if it's a profitable price, I like to put some of that in my pocket.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion at the Saskatchewan seed grower meeting about biotech wheat, and there was a lot of reference back to the flax situation in not a very positive way, and just we had to be careful. And so I think there's a lot of issues for producers to think about, and especially I think you hit it on the head with the cereal, that lentils obviously look good, canola is a profitable crop. But what cereal am I going to have in the rotation? And that's, there's really not a lot of answers there, and I don't think anybody left here with a lot of answers.
No, and there isn't a good one. And, canary seed, as a small acreage crop, 300,000-400,000 acres, it fits into the cereal rotation. And probably at the current price of 19 cents, it compares pretty favorably, but it's so sensitive to too many acres jumping into it and driving that price down. So
yeah,
you're right. What cereal do you grow that's going to make sense? Malting barley doesn't look that strong. Durum sucks. Wheat isn't a whole lot better than that. Oats, if you're in an area that can grow a big volume of oats, I think oats has some potential, but you better be able to grow a volume of it. So where else do what's the cereal answer? I don't know.
For sure. Well, Kevin, thank you very much for kind of doing a bit of a wrap for us, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Sounds good.